Yo, people. Aversyle here. Welcome back to, I believe, the 12th video in the scripting series. Now, I believe at the end of the 11th episode, I said something about, like, I'm ending the series. That's not true. Like, or maybe when I said I was ending the series, I think really what I meant was I'm ending the beginners series because I think we've covered, I mean, pretty much everything that you need to know in terms of beginner scripting. So now it's really just up to you to just remember everything, understand everything that I taught you. Because now we're going to move into the intermediate series. And the intermediate series is 100%, I know for a fact, is going to be the longest part of the series. And I'm thinking this is going to be a three-part series. I'm going to talk about beginner concepts, intermediate concepts, which is what we're doing now, and then we're going to talk about advanced concepts. But I truly do believe the intermediate concepts are going to take the longest amount of time because there's so much to cover in intermediate scripting. But when it comes to advanced scripting, I mean, there's only so much I'm going to go over because a lot of it is down to semantics, personal preference. I mean, there's certainly a lot of advanced scripting that's actually really useful, but I don't think I'm going to go that far into advanced scripting because there's just so much to cover when it comes to advanced scripting and just understanding Roblox Studio as an actual game engine. Like all that. That's what I mean when I talk about like advanced stuff. We're going to talk about like paradigms and, systems to maximize efficiency for your code, and we're going to talk about the fundamentals of how, like, you get the point. Like it's going down to like under the hood stuff. How everything really works at a fundamental level. And that isn't really the scope of this course. We're talking about intermediate concepts. So, we're still not really talking about fundamentally what a lot of stuff actually is. Now, in this series, I will briefly introduce more advanced concepts in the intermediate series. That's just going to happen, right? And even in the beginner series, I might have accidentally introduced you to some intermediate concepts and I didn't even notice. That sort of stuff can happen, but it doesn't hurt to know this stuff. And it's something you can probably pick up and understand even if you're only at this level, for instance. So, yeah, I will probably introduce some advanced concepts in a way that's digestible, of course, in this series. But the intermediate series is definitely the part of this series that I'm most excited for because there is a lot of really fun stuff. This is where you're going to really understand how to make games, okay? Intermediate scripting is where most of the action occurs, okay? Advanced scripting is really more, I'm not going to say theory based, but it does have a lot more theory instead of actual like applications and stuff. And once again, most of the advanced stuff is probably going to be useful mostly for large projects. Otherwise, intermediate stuff is going to get the job done generally. And you can even build an entire game with just intermediate level coding. But advanced coding is going to be where we're getting down to maximizing the efficiency in your game with different methods. And we're going to talk about that very, very long from now because I am predicting this series is going to take, just for the intermediate series, probably like 30, 40 episodes. It's going to be a long ways, folks. So I hope you're strapped in because, yeah, it's going to be a long one. So, welcome back to the scripting series, everyone. Today, we're going to be talking about tables. And we're not going to do a recap this episode because we made a game last episode, if you remember. So, we don't need to do a recap this time. But if you do want to go back and just try to refresh everything in your mind and just get everything flowing again, remember what a variable is, remember, just what a function is, all that stuff. Go play around with that stuff if you haven't already. It never hurts to work on some small projects, like the one we did last episode. But yeah, we're gonna hop right into this. So we're just gonna go ahead and insert a script into our server script service. We're gonna get rid of this little print statement. We are no longer a beginner. We know all this stuff, so we don't need to talk about print statements. So what is a table? Well, a table is a data type, so it can be stored as a variable. And we're going to do that actually. We're going to do local tab1 equals, and this is the syntax we're going to use to define a table. And I'll tell you what a table is and what it's useful for here in a second. So you're just going to do these like squiggly curly braces, I guess. It's just press shift, right shift on your keyboard, and then to the right of the letter P. That does the curly braces. So it should look like this. And that finds a table. Now, what does a table do? Well, a table essentially allows us to store a bunch of data types that we want to store. So let's say I want to store hello world. I want to store this string. Then we put a comma. So I want to store something else. I want to store the number 3. Let's say I want to store the true value, which is a Boolean. And then I want to store, I don't know, Roblox. And then let's say I want to store a function. Okay, you know what? You know what's an easier thing to do? Maybe I should define like a function. I don't know, local function Bob. I don't know, print Bob there. Okay. Um, and what we're gonna do is we're just gonna replace this function with Bob there. So we're storing this function call into this table. So now I need to tell you what a table actually is, what it's used for. We stored a bunch of values, okay? A bunch of data types. What exactly does this do? What is it useful for? Well, there's actually a lot of very useful ways to use tables, but this is kind of how I have to introduce them because that stuff kind of comes later, and I am going to talk about those pretty soon. Tables are going to be used probably on every episode. I'm not joking. They are so important in coding. But yeah, what is a table? So a table is just a data type that can store any number of data types that you list, and you separate them with a comma. And the comma is important because it separates everything in the table by what are called indexes. So an index just means what position in the table are we at? So this would be like similar to arguments in a function. This is not a function, so these are not arguments. These are called indexes or indices. I don't know, whatever. I think it's indices actually, but regardless. So this would be the first index. This would be the second index. This 3. This would be the third index. This would be the fourth index. This would be the fifth index. Okay, so why are you telling me about what an index is? Like, why is that important? Well, let's say I want to print a specific value in this tab1 table. How do I do that? Well, I can't just access this. Like, how do I access this? You access anything in this table by first listing your table. So tab1 is the name of the table. Then we're going to do square brackets. Okay, so it should be the same as your squiggly brackets, but you don't click, or sorry, you don't press shift. And you should get these square brackets. Now, what do you put in these square brackets? You put a number which represents the index that you're looking for in your table. So remember, the first thing in your table is always index 1. So it's the first position in your table. After the comma, then it's your second position in the table. Then the comma, third position, comma, fourth position, comma, fifth position. So let's say I wanted to print Roblox. I would count. So first I'd list my table, then I'd use square brackets, which is the syntax that we use to be able to reference what position in the table we're looking for. And in this case, we want the number to be 1, 2, 3, 4, because that's the position that this string data type is at in the table. So we'd say 4, I think it was. Did I say 4? Yeah, I think it's 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So print tab1, 4. Tab 1 is the name of the table, and the square brackets represents the index that we want to reference when we're printing. And that means tab 1, 4 is the same thing as just saying the string Roblox, which means we're going to print whatever the string is here, which is just Roblox. So when we run, of course, you probably know what's going to happen. It's just going to print. We also got Bob because the function ran because we called it in the table. So if you don't want to call a function and you just want to store the function itself in the table, just use the name of the function, but don't put the open closing parentheses because it'll automatically call it even if it's in a table. So for instance, if I do tab1 5 and then like that, that's going to call the function. It should call the function. Let me see here. So it's going to call Bob. Yeah, it's going to print Bob. Now, the reason that works is because we have the name of the function, so it's not going to call it, but it's going to store. This knows that this is a function data type, but it's not calling it because we didn't put the special syntax to call a function. But when we tab 1 5, that's going to reference Bob, and then if we use these open closing parentheses, that's going to call Bob because tab 1 5, this here just means Bob, right? Because that's the reference. Tab 1 5 is just a reference to this position in the table, which is Bob, and then we use open closing parentheses. That's just going to call the Bob function. But don't get too hooked up on that for now. It's not really important. I just want you to understand how position works. So this would be the first index in the function, this string data type. Then this number data type would be the second. Then this Boolean data type would be the third. Then the string would be the fourth, and then this function would be the fifth. And just remember to not call it in the table there because it'll call it. So yeah, so if we print, I don't know, print tab1 2, for instance, what's that going to print? Well, tab1 2 just refers to the second index in tab1 table. Well, what's the second index? Well, it's 3. Hello world is the first index, comma, 2. So this is the second index, which is 3. So it's going to print 3 as a number. And we get, voila, 3. Great. Awesome. So that's pretty much all I want you to know about tables for now. Well, actually, I do want to introduce you to two special functions related to tables. So let's go ahead and just delete this function and all this stuff. I'm actually going to remove this table or this function here. Just get that out of there. I'm going to introduce two special functions related to tables, and then I'm going to introduce how for loops can be used with tables, and it can do some very interesting stuff. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about those two special functions. So we're going to reference something called a library again. So if you don't remember, a library is just a special list of functions that you can use for any particular purpose. So for instance, task is a library, and then we list the function that we want to use. And in this case, we often used the task.wait function. And then we put the duration number, so it's going to wait 5 seconds before it does whatever's below here. And in the same way, table is another library. See, a library of table functions. So table dot, and now we can talk about any of these functions. So these functions are specific to, hold on, let me get this table value here. So table, type of table, a library of table functions. So we're talking about tables specifically. So this library, this table library, is going to have some useful functions that we can use to change our tables. Tab 1 is a table, so we can do some stuff with tab 1. Now, we're not going to talk about all of these. I would say a good number of these functions are very useful, and so you're definitely going to want to research these on your own. You can learn about all of these with your current knowledge. I'm not kidding. As far as I'm aware, I think so. But we're only going to talk about two very important functions for now in the table library. But trust me when I say I do use quite a few of these. These functions are mostly all very useful. There's only a couple that I don't use. So you're gonna want to pick up. Well, try to get a general understanding for most of them. The ones that you find interesting, because there are some very interesting things like table.find. That's going to be super useful. Table.sort, we're not going to talk about those. So we're going to talk about table.insert and table.remove. So table.insert. So the first argument that we're going to talk about is T. So T just means we have some table as our first argument. So we have to list a table as our first argument. So it knows table.insert knows what table we want to change. So we're going to always list our table that we want to change as the first argument. Then we need to give some data type that we want to insert into the table. So let's say I want to insert Bob. Okay, so now let's print the table. So tab 1. So you can actually print the entire table into your output by running. So let's do tab 1, or print tab 1, and let's run. And you'll see the table ... just means there are a list of things inside this table, and we can open it by clicking this arrow here. And we'll see if we open our script, we get index 1 equals hello. For now, I just want you to think of it as index 1 equals hello. I'll tell you, there is an actual better definition for you understanding this notation by something called a dictionary, but we're not talking about dictionaries. We're just talking about a table that is called a array, which for now, just understand it's just lists of data types by themselves. That's it. That's all I want you to think of it for now. But either way, just think of it as index 1 is hello world. It is. Index 2 equals 3. That's true. Index 3 equals true. That's true. Index 4 equals Roblox string. That's true. Then we have a fifth index, but in this table, we only have 4 indexes. But because we did table.insert into tab 1, this data type, this is basically going to insert whatever data type you list for whatever specific table at the end index of that table. So if there are only 4 values in this table, and you insert something into that table, well then it's going to put it into the 5th index, so at the end of the table. So it's going to insert another position, the 5th position, because now there is something to fill that in. But when you insert something into a table, it's going to put it at the end of that table. So yeah, that's basically what table.insert does. It just inserts a random data type, whatever you put as a second argument, into the first argument, which is your table. So it's going to put this data type into this table, and it's going to put it at the end of the table. And it's going to create that 5th position, or that 5th index for that data type that you created. So the last function I want to talk about is the table.remove function. So the first argument is our table, as always, tab 1. Then we're going to talk about the position. So remember, the index is a number, so we have to give, so now we have to give the index that we want to remove, which is just the position. So what position do we want to remove? Well, let's say I want to remove true, which is the 3rd index, so we just do 3. And that's what we do. We're going to remove 3, and that means we're going to remove whatever is the 3rd index or 3rd position in the table, which is true. And it's just going to remove that index. So now let's go ahead and just print tab 1, and let's go ahead and run. And let's go. 1, 2, 3. There is a 3rd index, but what happened is whatever was the 3rd index, it gets booted out, and then Roblox became the new. So it moved over. So basically it booted out true and then replaced that 3rd index with Roblox. And now there's no 4th index. Now, because there's only 3 values in the table, so now there's only 3 indices rather than 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's what table.remove does. It just removes the index that you want in a specific table. So that's useful as well for a lot of things, which we're going to talk about as soon as I can. I want to do a project with tables specifically because they are just so unbelievably important. Okay, so I'm going to I'll try to see when the next game I'm going to do is. Yeah, I think it's like once every 5 episodes or so, like 4. I don't remember, but I'll try to get another game out as soon as possible, like project for us to do. But yeah, all right, yeah, I'll do one more thing with you guys. So basically, there's another thing you do. So for I equals 1 to 5, let's say, do print tab 1 I. What do you think I was gonna do? Actually, hold on. Let's do num tab 1. What do you think that's gonna do? Let's go ahead and run. And Oh, hello world, 3 true Roblox. Why did it print that stuff? Well, if you noticed, it printed index 1 of this table, then it printed index 2 of this table, then it printed index 3, then it printed index 4. Well, why did it do that? Well, let me tell you why. In this for loop, 1 to num tab 1. Num tab 1 is a special keyword that you can use that basically tells us the number of positions or indices that are in a specific table. So num tab 1 just returns a number value which represents the number of positions that are in a specific table. In this case, it's tab 1. So num tab 1 just means how many indices are in this table. 1, 2, 3, 4. So for I equals 1 to 4, do print tab 1 I, which is the position, and it starts at 1. So print tab 1, 1, hello world. Then I is going to be 2 in the next iteration. So print tab 1, 2, prints 3. For I equals 3, print tab 1, 3. Then it's going to go to the last iteration because that's the maximum number of indices that is in the table. And it's just going to print tab 1, 4, which is the fourth position in tab 1. So that's a unique thing. You can put I into this here. So every iteration, I is going to be different. And that's a unique way to iterate over a table's indices. So yeah, I thought I'd just quickly go over for loops and how they're useful with tables. We're going to get into another very, very useful loop called a in pairs loop. But yeah, I love tables. They're actually if I had a favorite data type, a favorite thing to write code about in Roblox Studio, it would be tables and everything to do with tables. I love tables. They're so fun. There's so many things you could do with tables. And you might not understand that quite yet, but especially once I introduce in-paired loops, you'll understand tables are very, very special data types, and they're actually my favorite data type. So I love dealing with tables. They're very fun. I don't know. I just like playing around with tables. Anyways, I'm gonna stop babbling. Yeah, I hope this tutorial was helpful for you guys. I'm so happy to finally start the intermediate series. I've been wanting to start this off for forever now. I just didn't know what to make first. I was like, you know what? I'll just do tables. Why not? So that's what I decided to do. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. But until next time, I will see you guys later. Peace.